Number 4, a 14-inch deep beam has a 70 kip-inch moment force transferring between a moment connection to a steel column. What is the axial force on the plate connection of the beam's top flange to the column's web?
So this is a good segue because we're talking about a moment connection basically between a beam and a column. So I think if you put up the same drawing you had, Mike, from the previous problem. So one of the questions I sometimes get is, so it's great that I have a fixed connection, a moment connection, but where does all that force go? And so this is sort of
I'm
trying
going to the web though,
Yep.
right? So there's my web. Sorry, I'm very badly drawing that.
So, how does it go? So right now, when we look at the beam, that 70 kip-inch moment, you want to draw it like a little moment. Basically, it's going in as a rotation in the beam, so sort of into the top and bottom flange.
So
the top flange is kind of pushing, and the bottom flange is pulling. And that's what creates that 70 kip-inch moment. So what we want to do is we want to try to figure out how is it going into that column. And it gives us a clue that the beam is 14 inches deep. And so what's resisting it is that the lever arm is 14 inches. So moment is basically a force times a distance. And right now, it's always force times the distance. So right now it's giving us a moment, it's giving us a distance, so we can figure out what kind of force is going on to that column. So, you'll see this application in many places. And sometimes I know it's easy to get bogged down into all these formulas and such. But this is a pretty basic one that you'll see over and over again in many different applications. So if you want to figure out what the force is, you would take the moment and divide it by the distance. So here our moment that was given is 70 kip-inches. And the distance, sort of the lever arm it has to resolve it, is 14 inches. And so you'll see that the overall force is 5 kips. So we call it a tension and compression couple. So the force that's being pushed on the top flange is 5 kips, and on the bottom is also 5 kips. And
And so when you did that, essentially we just got rid of the inches on both of these.
we did.
And then we just divided that out and we got 5 because 14 goes into 75 and we have the kips left, so it's 5 kips.
Yep. And so you'll see that with like moment, for example, like moment frames and such, you'll see a lot of times the beams are deeper. And part of that reason is having that deeper beam spreads out the load more. And so you'll get, smaller forces onto the columns.
Because like if the D gets larger, then the M over D gets much
right?
smaller. If the denominator is getting bigger, then the overall fraction is getting smaller. So if you might, in a situation where it's 14 in certain spots, it might be more like 18 or something like that. And even that small, 4 inches is a lot, but
Yep.
even that small difference would start to make a pretty big impact on what the force load was going into that web.
Right. And so, not to get into too much of nitty gritty, but, those connection details, the things that we can do to try to reduce the cost of the job are these kind of little details. Not having to reinforce like the column outside of what the actual column size is and such really brings a lot of savings to the project. And so trying to keep some of these connections and such simple so that we can actually get these buildings built within budget.
So, okay, if you came across this question and you were like, okay, I think I get the idea, is like, okay, it's a moment connection. Moment means force times distance, so it's going to be the depth, and because that's where the only distance I could have, and we know the overall moment. So, like we're obviously sort of figuring out, kind of backtracking to figure out that 5 kip number.
Yep.
If you're trying to sort of put that all together in your head, what would you do first? Like, would you sketch it out?
I would probably sketch it out. I think, a lot of architects are visual learners, so am I for that matter. And so I think being able to see this sort of with the drawing that Mike had makes it clearer, I think, where the forces are going.
Yeah, you might want to do a better job than I did. But,
I think it's great.
but yeah, by seeing this as a beam coming into a column, it becomes easier to understand the idea of distance and like what that would mean, plus that force couple that you were talking about, the right and left versions of as that moment is trying to sort of rotate around, that you get this sort of these two forces together, and it's really much easier, I think it is as well, to if I sketch it out, I can see it.
Yes.
So this is one of those ones, if you're sketching it out and you've spent 2.5 minutes sketching it out and you're still not really sure what to do, I say C. Just answer,
C.
Or 300. You just put a number down because you're taking too long, and just make a good guess and move on. But if you can kind of sketch it out in, a minute or something, then you can probably answer it in half a minute.
Yep. And the other thing is, it's asking for, again, I always talk about like, oh, make sure you look at the units. Here it says a force. Force is typically in pounds or kips or such. How can I manipulate just the two numbers that they're giving me to end up as in the correct unit? And if you look at it, like how Mike crossed out the inch in the numerator and the denominator, it's just, these are sort of like little clues you can see within the problem to say, hey, what can I do to get to the final answer?
Yeah, and one of the things that will happen often on these things is one number will be in pounds and one number will be in kips, and it probably won't be that hard of a question. They're just really looking to make sure that you understand that those are different
different units. Yep.
And that you're going to understand to judge that.
Sure.
Guys, 2 questions here. Christopher and Clayton had 2 different questions on this same problem. Christopher is asking about, originally maybe thought that he wanted to use 7 inches instead of that 14 inches. Wondering if that, if there's anything there. Also, Clayton's talking about the direction of the moment force and wondering if the direction of the moment force is important as you're trying to solve this one.
I'll go with the simpler one first. The direction of the moment doesn't matter in this case, whether it's going clockwise or counterclockwise. It's just the tension compression couple. For example, the top will, instead of being under compression, it'll be under tension, and vice versa. But in terms of the actual quantity of number, it's just exactly the same.
And thankfully they don't actually get into, like,
Right.
They didn't give us any more detail that would force us to know which way it was going. If they did, then you'd have to really start making sure you had the right direction. But because we don't know that, it doesn't really matter because you're going to end up with the same 5.
Right. And then in terms of whether it's 7 inches or 14 inches, Mike's handy-dandy diagram here, I think, shows that the top flange and the bottom flange are 14 inches apart. And when we talk about moments and beams, we almost always expect that exclusively the tension and compression goes into the flanges and not into the webs. We don't really count on the webs very much in terms of moment capacity. And so because of that, the distance of 14 between the top and bottom flange is what's important.
So there are plenty of other places where 7 comes into play when we're understanding, when we're trying to like calculate a I don't know, section modulus or something like that. Like that, that's where you're getting how far away is the material from the neutral axis.
Yep.
And that's a key number. It's just that in this case, it's really sort of, if this thing is pushing, it's pivoting off a certain point, and if it's pulling, it's pivoting off a certain point.
Right.
So in this case, we're using the full 14 because that's the whole rotation that's happening.
That's right.
And Valerie asked, is the top and bottom flange forces, are they always equal?
In this case, yes, they are.
Okay,
Yes.
so not necessarily always, but in this example,
Yes.
definitely.
When would they not be equal? Because wouldn't it mean that there was a twist happening?
There would be. And so, yes, so in this case and almost every other case, when you talk about moments and tension and compression couples, the tension and compression numbers are exactly the same.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things to take away from that little quickie discussion there is, one of the things I love about structural engineers is that they say things with such clarity and simplicity. Is like, well, there's a 5 kip load here and it's a 5 kip load there, and they are equal to each other, and so it all magically equals out. Well, what's actually happening is people are moving furniture around, and somebody's bringing the mail cart through, and there's a whole, today there's a group of kids who are showing up for what happens in this office career day. And so there's a weird load thing that's going on, and it all is happening and moving and shifting all around. These numbers aren't actuality. They're a way to be able to have a reasonable guess, to be able to answer reasonable questions about how deep a beam should be, or how, we take all right, it could be in this scenario that's sort of it's not the worst case scenario, but it's pretty close to a worst case scenario. It's pretty safe if we assume this. What would happen if we assumed that fairly bad scenario? This is the numbers that we would get, and therefore we have to make sure that the flange can handle that and the web can handle that. So we're making up these numbers as a way to sort of see what a bad situation is, so that we know, as long as we've kept within that, we're all okay. In actuality, the actual load going in in that moment is probably something like 1 kip or something.
Yep, but code, we have to follow that code.
Right, so this isn't reality.
No.
This is a series of made-up numbers that are useful in making sure that we're safe.
Yes. Not quite made up, but someone out there, this is their PhD thesis, trying to figure out the probability of all these things. So they're based on some
They're based
research,
on something. Yes,
right?
they're based on research. Well, and actually it is a
there.
little different these days than it used to be. It used to be that you would say, all right, we'll figure this out, and then we're going to add X percentage as a factor of safety.
Right.
And now those things are it's a little bit more tuned to the actual, like if you have a situation where there's not that much extra factor of safety you need to add, then that number gets a little lower, so we can make these things a little bit more efficient. And in situations where we're really worried about it, we have a bigger factor of safety on it. So the PhD you're talking about is somebody has gone through and calculated all those different scenarios out.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're not, I don't mean they're made up numbers, but it's not like if we actually went into this building and tested this, that's going to be 5 kips.
No, it won't be.
This is a useful number for designing the building. It's a way of understanding and keeping everybody smart and safe without. Because if you really were going to figure out every possibility, it would take everybody forever and it would cost an enormous amount of money.
Right.
Right. So think of it that way. Think of it as we're looking for easy ways to figure it out and keep it safe.
And I think also a good thing to keep in mind is, remember, NCARB is assessing you for minimum competency.
Yeah.
Just to give you some perspective, they're probably testing you on the basics here. Although there may be like a ton of possible variations, they're probably going to give you, a somewhat reasonable question here with a reasonable situation. They're probably not going to give you like a weird edge case as they're testing you and they're trying to assess that, right?
Yeah, and for example, in the first question we did with the square footing going underneath the column, they're not going to give you a situation where the column is 2 foot by 15 foot or something like that. Like it's going to be straightforward and square. They might give you a word problem that says, hey, here's a weird footing, what should you worry about, or something like that. But they're not going to make it hard to do. Like you have to be able to do the calculations. Only a very small percentage will actually be calculations. But you have to be able, if there are calculations, you have to be able to do these calculations in, 45 seconds or a minute or something like that. So you have a few moments to kind of think about it and check it and do that. You're really talking a minute and a half for a typical question. So these have to be pretty quick things, which is why they're not going to go crazy in trying to trick you in terms of the numbers. They might throw in a couple of extra numbers that you have to know to disregard, but they're not going to go out of their way to make it hard for you.